Hi, everyone. So glad to see that you are in a small group this week or leading a small group, whichever one that may be for you. We really do believe that discipleship best takes place in circles, and so we're glad that you are building community through your life group today. Boy, what an exciting start we got off to last week in Ecclesiastes, and as talking about chasing the wind and some of Solomon's efforts to find true and happy meaning in life and lasting meaning in life, I should say. Just quick review. Remember that Ecclesiastes is more or less a journal that Solomon wrote. Most believe in the latter years of his life. Some would say the middle life, maybe even like a midlife crisis. We don't know if he was depressed. We don't know if he was clinically depressed. We do know that he's disillusioned with life and discouraged and in search of real meaning. And honestly, whether we ever reach the place of clinical depression or not, all of us ask that question at one point of time in our lives or another. And that question is this all there is? Is there anything else? What is this meaning in life? We all search for purpose, and we all search for fulfillment and satisfaction in life, and maybe even some happiness in life. And that word is okay. C.S. Lewis told us that it's the Christian's duty to find happiness in life, and yet we have to find where that true happiness comes from. Solomon clearly makes every attempt to find some kind of happiness without God. But ultimately, he finds that when he is searching for happiness and fulfillment and contentment and satisfaction apart from God, everything is futile and everything proves to be futility. And so eventually, Solomon comes to the conclusion that, maybe I need to find this satisfaction in God. So this week, we're going to find Solomon searching for the good life, searching for meaning in the good life. Now, it's interesting. Just this week, I was in a store and I noticed some T-shirts that described the good life or said the good life and had cartoon figures who were doing different things that would imply this is the good life. And it occurred to me that all of us have different ideas about what is the good life. Maybe for you, the good life is having a fishing pole in your hand. Maybe for you, the good life is having a golf club in your hand, or maybe it's having a needle and thread in your hand, or maybe it's having your hand in the shopping mall. I don't know. Maybe it's cruising on the river or relaxing in the beach, but whatever you would describe as the good life, that's what Solomon is now searching for. He's searching for the good life and saying, certainly, this good life will bring me satisfaction. The problem is, all of us search for different things, but we seem to wind up at the same place. It's not fulfilling, and it's not lasting. As long as we're connected to life on this earth, we're committed to a dull, predictable, routine lifestyle, whether we like it or not. And at some point, that pleasure, that satisfaction is going to break down. So Solomon's search continues. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 3 and 4, the end of chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 4. We talked Sunday about this problem with life. The problem with life is it just doesn't always work the way we would like it for it to. You might look carefully at chapter 3, verses 16 through 22, because Solomon comes to the conclusion there that the problem with life is that it's not always fair. In fact, at some point in time, we're going to find that life is not fair. And then in chapter 4, we turn the page to the next chapter. Solomon says the problem with the good life is that life is often not so good and that there are real issues. Life is often oppressive. The first 3 verses of chapter 4, take the time to read those, unpack those a little bit. Several times he talks about the oppression that he finds in life under the sun. In fact, so much that he commended the dead and said, it's better off that you're not even born. Oppression, maybe you've been there, have you? When life seems so oppressive. And then secondly, in verses 4 through 6, he talks about the fact that life can leave you reeling and feeling empty. Maybe he's talking about burnout. We would describe it today. Certainly he's talking about going through life and finding emptiness. He says in verse 4, I saw that all labor and skillful workers due to one person's jealousy of another. This too is futile and chasing the wind. The fool folds his arms and consumes his own flesh. Consumes his own flesh. There's no rest. There's no satisfaction. And in fact, all it does is leaves empty. And then in verses 7 and 8, he says, the problem with life is often lonely. Verse 8, there is a person without a companion, without even a son or a brother. And there is no end to all his struggles. His eyes are still not content with riches. He's lonely. No matter what we have by way of projects that we're involved in, achievements or possessions or money or wealth or wisdom or any of those things that Solomon possessed and that some of us possess, there's an emptiness when we're lonely. We're built for community. We're built for relationship. And when we miss those relationships, life becomes less than satisfactory. So Solomon says the good life really is not so good. And then he builds an argument to the point that he comes to a conclusion that's a little disturbing. Let me just read it with you. In chapter 3, verses 20 to 22, here's his conclusion. He says, all are going to the same place. All come from dust and all return to dust. Who knows if the spirits of the children of Adam go upward and the spirits of animals go downward to the earth? I have seen that there is nothing better than for a person to enjoy his activities because that's his reward. For who can enable him to see what will happen after he dies? What a sad conclusion. Solomon, disillusioned with life, concludes to this fact. There's nothing here. And who knows what happens after death? You better go ahead and enjoy life right now because there may be nothing there. But the truth is, Solomon knows, the teacher knows that there's more. And he's leading us to discover what is more. And he's making a point to us, that is, that we need to understand there is much more to life and real meaning in life than what we experience right now. Real meaning, here's our takeaway. Real meaning in life is not found in our experiences now, but in eternity to come. Death is certain. There is life after death, and we come to understand that. He says in verse 11 of chapter 3 that God has placed eternity in our hearts. Solomon knew that if you only go with the senses, if you only go what you can see, touch, hear, smell, feel, if you only go with your emotions and what you have in this flesh, then you're better off dead. But the problem is he was leaving the spiritual aspect out of that thought process. Because you see, what makes it all real and worthwhile and lasting is our personal relationship with God. You see, Solomon says, I'm not sure what happens after death. But because of the teaching of Jesus and because of the New Testament, we know exactly what happens after death. And we know that for the child of God, there is meaning and fulfillment and satisfaction in the life to come. In fact, the Apostle Paul said, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Paul knew exactly what would happen after death. The answer is not to end this quiet life quickly and get out of all the misery. The answer is to invest our life in eternity. Paul said, now if I live on in the flesh, this means fruit for my labor. I don't know for which one I should choose. I'm torn between the two. I long to depart and be with Christ, which is far better, but to remain in the flesh is more necessary for your sake. So Paul would say, yes, indeed, enjoy this life, but find your fulfillment not in the search for the good life, but find your fulfillment in the God of eternity. And through a personal relationship with him, and invest this life. Don't waste this life searching for things that don't fulfill, but rather invest this life in eternity and in the days to come. Here's a good question to leave you with for thought. Are you chasing the good life, or are you investing your life in eternity? God bless you as you make this discussion. Wish I could be there. Pretty sure it's going to be an exciting discussion. God bless. See you next time.